Hello everyone, my name is Krizzia and I'm Tagsip, and today I'm going to talk about some practical considerations when conducting utility analysis. And also later on, I'm going to discuss about the methods for cutting scores. But before that, let us define first what is utility analysis. So as what Bea discussed earlier, that utility analysis is an educated guess of which is the best possible course that we should take. So basically, it focuses on the cost benefit of a test that would help us to decide if that test is useful or high in utility. So there are numbers of practical matters that has to be considered during or when conducting utility analysis. So issues related to existing base rates may affect the accuracy and the decisions made on the basis of the tests. So the first is
The pool of job applicants. The pool of possible job applicants for a particular type of position may vary with the economic climate. It may be that in periods of high unemployment, there are significantly more people in the pool of possible job applicants than in period of high employment. Closely related to issues concerning the available pool of job applicants is the issues of how many people would actually accept the employment position offered to them even if they were found to be qualified candidates. The second is the complexity of the job. The more complex the job, the more people differ on how well or poorly they do that job. Whether or not the same utility model apply to the job of varied complexity, and whether or not the same utility analysis methods are equally applicable. The next to be considered is the CAT score in use, or also known as CAFOP score. CAT score, as a usually numerical reference point derived as a result of judgment and used to divide a set of data into two or more classifications. For example, a distinction can be made between a relative CAT score and a fixed CAT score. Relative CAT score. This type of CAT score is a set with reference to the performance of a group or some target segment of a group. It is also referred to as a norm reference CAT score. Next is fixed CAT score. That is typically set with reference to a judgment concerning a minimum level of proficiency required to be included in a particular classification, may also be referred to as absolute CAT score. And multiple CAT scores refers to the use of two or more CAT scores with reference to one predictor for the purpose of categorizing test takers. Multiple Yodel selection process. A CAT score is in place for each predictor used. One collective element of multi-stage decision-making process is in which the achievement of particular CAT score on one test is necessary in order to advance to the next stage of evaluation in selection process. The last is compensatory model of selection. An assumption is made that high scores on one attribute can, in fact, balance out or compensate for low scores on another attribute. When a compensatory selection model is in place, the individual or entity making the selection will, in general, differentially weigh the predictors being used in order to arrive at a total score. For instance, an applicant with strong driving skills but weak customer service skills. All it might take for this applicant to blossom into an outstanding employee is some additional education, including reading and exposure to videotaped models, and training, role play, and on-the-job supervision in customer service.
Have you ever wondered how the labels on summative assessment score reports, such as proficient, advanced, meeting expectations, or exceeding expectations, came to be? These are all examples of performance level descriptors. These performance levels are used for interpreting student scores and are important for high-stakes accountability by tracking the percentage of students in each performance level. But with such important decisions tied to these metrics, such as how schools are evaluated or if students should be promoted a grade, you might wonder how those performance level classifications are made. This assessment literacy video will break down two important concepts that will help you understand these classifications: performance level descriptors and cut scores. Classifying students into performance levels begins with writing performance level descriptors, or PLDs. PLDs, sometimes called achievement level descriptors, describe what students in a particular performance level are expected to know and be able to do, and are often phrased in relation to grade level standards. For example, a PLD for the basic performance level might say that a student has not met grade level standards, whereas a PLD for advanced might say that a student has exceeded grade level standards. Sometimes, the PLDs provide details about the skills within standards that students should know. Once performance level descriptors are defined, testing programs specify the location on the test scale that differentiates one performance level from the next. These are called cut scores. You can think of that term as cutting the scale into different performance levels. Cut scores might use the scale score metric, or the raw score metric, that is, the number of questions answered correctly, depending on how the test is scored. The concept of cut scores is used in many different fields, even if it's not called a cut score. For example, loan companies set credit score ranges for which credit scores are considered poor, fair, good, or excellent credit. So, how are cut scores set? There are a number of different ways of deciding what exact number is the location on the scale that differentiates performance levels. Sometimes a panel of experts, such as teachers and content specialists, are convened to collaboratively make judgments about where cut scores should be placed based on considering the expectations specified in the performance level descriptors and closely reviewing the items on the test. In other cases, real student data may drive cut score placement by seeing which percentage of students would fall into each performance level for certain cut scores. Often, cut scores are set with both data and expert judgments. Cut scores can tell you just how far away a student is from a higher or lower performance level. For example, if a student is classified as proficient on a mid-year benchmark test, but scores very close to the cut score distinguishing between proficient and advanced, that student may hit the advanced category with just a little bit of growth by the end of the year. Cut scores can also be used to set goals with students because you can see just how much a student must improve by to make it to the next performance level. Keep in mind that there is always some variability around a score. The variability is referred to as the standard error of measurement and helps provide a level of confidence around a score. Regardless, it is typical for students to be classified into performance levels based on their single score. Study Island state-specific benchmark assessments are built from the state assessment blueprints, and the performance levels reported with Study Island benchmark scores reflect those used in that state. Many states have 4 levels, often called below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. In those states, there are 3 different cut scores for each benchmark assessment for each grade and content area. Edmentum research scientists analyze data from the Study Island benchmarks to set these cut scores using various methods. Now, when you review your Study Island benchmark or state assessment score reports, you'll have a better understanding of how those performance levels were determined.
And now, let's proceed to methods for setting cut scores. There are different ways in giving exams. It could be multiple choices, essays, true or false, fill in the blanks, or etc. But in terms of grading that exams, how are we going to tell if that score passes the test? Cut scores are chosen points on the score scale of a test. That point are used to decide whether or not a precise test score is enough for some purpose. The process of determining an effective and valid CAT score is referred to as an standard setting. There are different methods in standard setting, including the Angoff method, the known group method, or also known as method of contrasting groups, item response theory, or IRT-based methods. Under IRT-based methods are item mapping methods, bookmark method, and other methods are method of predicting yields, discriminant analysis, or what we call discriminant function analysis. So the first method that I'm going to discuss is the Angoff method. It was devised by William Angoff. For setting fixed CAT score can be applied to personal selection tasks as well as the questions regarding the presence or absence of a particular trait, attribute, or ability. The Achilles heel of Angoff method is when there is low inter-rater reliability and major disagreement regarding how certain population of test takers should respond to items. In such scenarios, it may be time for Plan B, a strategy for setting CAT score that is driven more by data and less by subjective judgments. So the next method is the known groups method, or also known as method of contrasting groups. It entails collection of data on the predictor of interest from groups known to possess and not to possess a trait, attribute, or ability of interest. A CAT score is a set on the test that best discriminate the two groups' test performance. But the main problem with using known groups is that determination of where to set the cutoff score is inherently affected by the composition of the contrasting groups and has no standard set of guidelines exist for choosing contrasting groups. IRT, or Item Response Theory-based methods. Methods described thus far for setting CAT scores are based on classical test score theory. In this theory, CAT scores are typically set based on test takers' performance across all the items on the test. Some portion of the total number of items on the test must be scored correct, or in any way that indicates the test taker possesses the target trait or attribute in order for the test taker to pass the test or be deemed to possess the targeted trait or attribute. Under IRT-based method, there is item mapping method. It entails the arrangement of items in a histogram, with each column in the histogram containing item deemed to be of equivalent value. Under also the IRT-based method, there is bookmark method. IRT-based method of setting CAT scores that is more typically used in academic application. Use of this method begins with the training of experts with regards to the minimal knowledge, skills, and/or abilities that test takers should possess in order to pass. Now let us proceed to other methods. Method of predictive yield. It was proposed by Edward Lee Thorndike. It is a norm reference method for setting CAT scores, a technique for setting CAT scores which took into account the number of positions to be filled, projections regarding the likelihood of offer acceptance, and the distribution of applicant scores. Lastly, the discriminant analysis, or also known as discriminant function analysis. It is another approach to setting CAT scores, employs a family of statistical techniques. Techniques are typically used to shed light on the relationship between identified and two naturally occurring groups. I attach here some links that you might want to watch later for more explanations, examples, and clarifications.
So that ends my report. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to triage your feelings, always make good choices, and stay safe. Bye!